used to think the scariest thing about hiking alone was getting lost. After what happened to me and my friend Ryan, I don't think that's true anymore. This happened in October a few years ago when we decided to spend a Saturday hiking through a large state forest about 2 hours from where we lived. It wasn't some extreme wilderness trip. There were marked trails, parking areas, wooden signs, and even a small visitor center near the entrance. We had been there before. The trail we chose was about 6 miles long, and according to the map, it should have taken us 3 or 4 hours. We brought water, sandwiches, 2 phones, and a small first aid kit. Nothing about the morning felt dangerous. It was actually one of those perfect fall days. Cold enough that you needed a jacket, but not freezing. The leaves were orange and yellow, and the sky was completely clear. We started hiking around 10:30 in the morning. For the first hour, we barely talked about anything serious. We joked about work. We complained about how much we hated waking up early. We stopped twice to take pictures. Everything was completely normal. Then about halfway through the trail, Ryan stopped. I almost walked into him. "What?" He pointed down at the mud beside the trail. There was a footprint, a boot print. It wasn't particularly strange by itself. People use the forest all the time. But Ryan pointed out something I hadn't noticed. The trail was covered in dry leaves. The ground around it was mostly dry. Yet this footprint was fresh enough that the edges were still sharp. "Someone came through here recently," he said. I shrugged. "Probably another hiker." He nodded. "Yeah." And we kept walking. About 10 minutes later, we saw another one, then another. They weren't directly on the trail. They were just off to the side, following the same direction we were going. Ryan looked back at me. "Okay, that's weird." I laughed. "You're freaking yourself out." "Maybe." We kept going. A few minutes later, I heard something behind us, a branch snapping. I turned around. Nothing, just trees. Ryan looked back too. "Deer?" "Probably." We stood there for maybe 5 seconds, then continued. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. That's the problem with fear. When something dangerous happens all at once, your brain knows what to do, but when it happens slowly, you keep explaining it away. About 20 minutes later, we heard voices. Very faint voices. Somewhere deeper in the woods. I couldn't make out the words. Ryan stopped again. "Do you hear that?" "Yeah." We listened. There were definitely 2 voices, at least that's what it sounded like. We assumed there were other hikers nearby. The problem was that the voices didn't sound like they were on the trail. They sounded like they were somewhere behind the trees. Ryan called out, "Hello?" The voices stopped. Immediately. We waited. Nothing. Then Ryan laughed. "Okay, that's creepy." I told him it was probably because whoever was there didn't hear him. We continued. 10 minutes later, we reached a small clearing. There was an old wooden bench beside the trail. We decided to stop and eat. While we were sitting there, I noticed something across the clearing. A tree. There was a small piece of orange fabric caught on one of its branches. I thought it might be part of a hiking jacket. Ryan walked over to look at it. When he came back, he wasn't smiling anymore. "What?" he said. "Hank, that's not from a jacket." He showed me a piece of orange plastic. It looked like part of a hunting marker. That made us uncomfortable. We both knew hunting wasn't allowed on that particular trail. Still, we decided it wasn't worth worrying about. We finished eating and started walking again. That's when we noticed the footprints had changed. They were no longer beside the trail. They were directly on it. One set of boot prints. Same size, same pattern. And they were going in the same direction we were. Ryan crouched down. "These are fresh." I looked ahead. The trail disappeared around a bend. Something about that suddenly made me uncomfortable. "Let's turn around," I said. "Well," Ryan agreed. We started walking back. We'd gone maybe 50 yards when I heard a sound behind us. A cough. Not an animal. A human cough. Ryan stopped. I grabbed his arm. We looked back. Nothing. Then, a branch moved, about 20 yards away. Someone had been standing behind a tree. I didn't see a face. I only saw a dark shape move backward. Ryan whispered, "Did you see that?" "Yeah." We didn't speak again. We started walking faster, then faster. We weren't running yet. We didn't want to panic, but after maybe a minute, we heard footsteps. Behind us, crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, deliberate. We stopped. The footsteps stopped. We started walking. They started again. That's when Ryan said something I'll never forget. "Don't look back." I asked why. He whispered, "Vero, because I think he's following us." We reached the next trail marker. Our car was still about 2 miles away. We decided to run. We didn't care anymore about looking stupid. We ran. The footsteps followed. Sometimes they were close. Sometimes they disappeared. Then we heard a man's voice behind us. "Hey!" We didn't stop. "Hey!" Ryan yelled back. "We're leaving!" The voice answered, "You dropped something." We kept running. I almost turned around. Then I realized something. We hadn't dropped anything. Ryan had the same thought because he yelled, "Don't stop!" We ran until we reached a wider section of trail, and that's when I saw a man standing between 2 trees. He was maybe 40 or 50 years old, dark jacket, baseball cap, work boots. He wasn't carrying a backpack. He just stood there, watching us. He raised one hand. "Relax." Neither of us relaxed. He smiled. "You boys shouldn't be out here." Ryan said, "We're going back to the parking lot." The man nodded. "Yeah, you should." There was something about his voice, too calm, too casual. I noticed he was holding something in his right hand. It looked like a knife. I couldn't tell for sure, but I didn't want to find out. Ryan stepped backward. I did the same. Then the man took 1 step toward us. That was enough. We turned and ran. We didn't stop until we reached the parking lot. There were several cars there. A family was getting out of one. We ran directly toward them. The man never came after us. When we looked back, he was gone. We called the park authorities. Later, police searched the area. They didn't find him. But they did find several sets of fresh footprints away from the main trail. And they found a small temporary shelter hidden behind some trees. Inside were food wrappers, blankets, empty water bottles, and a notebook. We never found out who the man was. I still hike. But I don't hike without checking the trail conditions first. And I never ignore footprints anymore. Because the thing that bothers me most isn't that someone was in those woods. It's that we saw the footprints. We heard the voices. We heard the footsteps. And every single time we found a reason not to believe what was happening. The whole time someone may have been watching us. And I still wonder, how long had he been following us before we noticed? Story 2. The Voice in the Trees. This happened when my younger sister, Emma, was 12. I was 21 at the time, and my parents had asked me to take her camping for the weekend. It was supposed to be a simple trip. 2 nights, 1 tent, a small lake, and a hiking trail that went around the edge of the forest. Emma loved camping. I didn't. But I wanted to be a good older brother, so I agreed. We arrived Friday afternoon. The campground was quiet. There were only a few other people there. We set up the tent, made sandwiches, and spent the first couple of hours walking around the lake. If you want to hear the next part, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. The final part is coming soon.